when we first started, people thought we were crazy. What we see now is that no, it's a big societal change in the perception of both the bigger picture that we don't have to talk about why there should be a sustainable approach to the future, because that's everybody knows there is no other way than a sustainable way. And I think that companies should actually take their responsibility.
Speaking of sustainability, a podcast where we talk to frontrunners, innovators, and business specialists on, well, sustainability and where they think their industries are headed, and more importantly, how they can make them more sustainable. Hi everybody, I'm Hanni Larma from Ecochain, and in today's talk, I will speak with Rob Dool, the CEO and founder of Yumeko. We will talk about sustainable innovation, why examining the way we build things matters, and about the future of the textile industry. Stay tuned. So, hi Rob, thank you very much, firstly, for being here and for sharing your story and your knowledge. So what would be really great is if you could shortly introduce yourself and also tell us a little bit about your business, Yumeko.
Yeah. My name is Rob Dool. I'm the founder, one of the founders, and currently the CEO of Yumeko, which is a Dutch bedding company. And my background is I studied international law, human rights, law of war, and had a whole career in different fields, amongst others in advertising, but I also was co-founder of a non-profit organization helping children in war.
Yep.
And for the last 11 years, I've been doing Yumeko, and that's our mission is to change the world sleeping.
Great.
So that's exactly what we do.
Nice. And what got you into sustainability and working for sustainable textiles in Yumeko?
Yeah, well, it's quite a long story, but I believe in that individuals can actually change the world, and from a very small scale to a very large scale.
Yeah.
So I actually believe in that empowerment of people. And that was what the cause that we started a non-profit organization as people only in their 20s and thinking that you could actually do it, and then proving that you could actually change things. I went into advertising, and then in a certain moment, I was on the board of this non-profit organization. So when I left after 15 years, I thought, oh, this is a big imbalance in my life. I'm not doing anything to improve the world at this moment. So what am I going to do?
Right.
So I thought, okay, this sustainability, so corporate social responsibility, that's the field I want to go, but I didn't know what to do. So my friend and I, whom I started Yumeko with, we were looking at different business models and different products and different services and trying to find out how can we actually change something? Where is there a real impact to be made?
Yeah.
So we were looking at all different kind of things, from tea and coffee to solar panels to electric cars, and we didn't just see a business model until one moment when he called me like 11:30 at night, and he said, "Rob, I have an idea, but what are you sleeping under?" And it's another example of that people don't realize where their stuff actually comes from. So I said, no, I have no idea. I think there's down inside. It's probably made from cotton.
Yep.
But I'm going to look at it. And so I found out it was down. And then when you dive into the world of textiles and the world of filling materials and how stuff are made, you actually uncover a lot of, things there that aren't supposed to be that way.
Right. Yeah.
Cotton is the most polluting textile on earth.
Right.
It consumes about between 20-25% of all pesticides and chemicals in agriculture worldwide. And filling material like down is often, in those days when we started, it was still being plucked from live geese, which is animal cruelty. And we thought, why? Why do people make stuff like they do it?
Exactly.
Why make this kind of decision? So we said, well, That's probably a different way. But let's start looking at how we can do things differently. And that's exactly how we started Yumeko.
Nice. So I guess that's quite a typical route in terms of finding a problem in your own daily life and creating a business to solve that problem.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
And what would you say is the kind of main driver behind sustainable change in your company currently? Is that kind of customers, or is it this purpose that you were looking for in your work, or legislation? What would you say is the kind of
The main driver.
drivers?
I think people.
People?
I think if I look at my team here at Yumeko, we're all very much convinced that things should change.
Yeah.
We've chosen our niche in which to do that.
Yeah.
And luckily, I'm not the only one driving change anymore. There's a whole team of almost 30 people now who are really willing and able to change the world and to change and to look at different approaches in how to produce things. So in an ethical way, looking at all the certifications you actually need to produce something that's non-polluting, that's non-harmful for people, animals, or the environment itself.
Great.
So it's people who drive the change that we make. And it's on the other hand, it's the consumer as well, because the consumer, without the consumer, we wouldn't be able to do it. And we see that the popularity of our products really is driven by that consumer who really, when they try it out for the first time, they say, well, I don't want anything else anymore.
Yeah, I'm one of those customers.
Oh, you're one of them. Thank you. Yeah.
So is it also kind of with, you mentioned the people that you work with. Is that also an important factor when you are hiring, that people must have this purpose or drive for sustainable innovation and that type of thing? Or how do you approach hiring your team?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we absolutely select the people that we choose on their drive to actually make a change.
Yeah.
Both from a business perspective as well as from a human perspective. We have formulated our own DNA, which we like to, this is the people fit that we have, which is both entrepreneurial, very driven.
Mm-hmm.
All our people, they have the problem that they take too much, how do you call it, luggage on their shoulders, which is very entrepreneurial. But at the same time, we want people to be meaningful. Mm-hmm. And that means that both in our communication with each other and the way we create truthfulness, openness, being vulnerable, allowed to be vulnerable. Yeah. And that's a balance. And so we look at your sustainable drive. Mm-hmm. But I actually think everybody is able to find that sustainable drive. But in the end, we need people who are willing to make that balance in our DNA as well.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. And how do you think that that's changed over the years of working at Yumeko? Have you seen an increase in people being interested also in these kind of sustainable jobs? And
absolutely. No, I think that when we first started, people thought we were crazy. So what the hell are you doing? I mean, changing the bedroom, there's nothing unsustainable there. Why should you do this? There was a lot of skepticism and resistance to what we're doing, both from my colleagues in the bedding branch, as well as consumers who didn't see the added value of it. Mm-hmm. And what we see now is that it's a big societal change in the perception of both the bigger picture, that we don't have to talk about why there should be a sustainable approach to the future, because that's, everybody knows there is no other way than a sustainable way. But the other hand, it's also looking at yourself. You really want to change something, or you really want to have a purpose in life. That's why, well, when we started, we didn't get a lot of job applications, but now every time we have a vacancy, there's a lot of job applications from young people as well as elder people. Yeah. So it's, we see a big change in society across the line for what we're doing.
Nice. And how does that translate into business opportunities and kind of a commercial, standpoint? It's pretty interesting, I think, in the bedding industry and the textile industry.
Well, for me, the biggest compliment we can get is that there's now competitors. Well, we call them colleagues because we stand for the same thing. But there's like 7 or 8 Dutch companies now focusing on more sustainable materials, on, well, doing no harm. Not only doing no harm, no, we try to do good instead. So I'm seeing that a lot of new companies getting up, and we see existing larger companies also taking the route of more sustainable approach.
Interesting.
So and from a consumer point of view, we had to drive, like you had to drive it, that it starts. But now we've seemed to have found a momentum in our commercial approach as well. By going on to television, creating more brand awareness, but also creating awareness about the problem, which is it's a fine balance in how do you actually tell your story without being negative about what the situation is.
Yeah. And what would you say, what is the main problem in textile?
I think that I have this, it's quite a confession. I have this guilty pleasure that when my kids are in bed, I start looking at channels like Discovery and National Geographic. And there's this program, How Things Are Made. And the whole thing is, why do we make things the way we do?
Yeah.
And I think that's, well, in answer to your question, that's re-looking at how do we make things and why do we make it the way we do, even with harm to the environment or to animals. I was just reading an article somewhere where they said that, I don't remember the animal exactly, but it was like if you take out the eye, one of its 2 eyes, it gets stressed and it produces more. Same with, for instance, silk. If you stress the larvae, they produce more. But why do we stress animals? Is that a good thing? No, it produces more. So is it just shareholder value we're talking about, or is it just it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
So what you are aiming to do is to change the purpose of the production in the first place, if I understand you correctly.
Absolutely. Yeah. We start looking at different kinds of materials. Just why do we make it that way? So, for instance, if you take the down issue, which I mentioned earlier, down is something that grows on geese and ducks, and it grows on their breasts. So it's not feathers; it's the stuff that's on their breast, and it counters water. So it's there for a purpose. But why do we pluck it from live animals, which is a poverty problem in China? Because a small-scale farmer who has 10 geese, if he plucks his geese like 5 times, he earns a little bit more money. And he, at the same time, knows that the animal is crying out in pain while he's doing it. Yeah, it's terrible. So how do we stop it? Well, we started looking at 2 different alternatives, which is a responsible down standard, which is a certification of down in which there is a proof of not treating animals badly. And the second one is that we actually started looking at how we recycle old down. So we started up a project in which our customers send back their old down products, even if it's a jacket or a pillow and all. And we are able to recycle about 99% of all that down. There's about 70% is high quality down still, and you can use it for duvets and pillows. And the other 30% is being reused in a different way. So we thought, then you take out the old animal part of it, reusing what we already have. So rethinking, and we're all, of course, always looking at, is there a different material which we can use, which isolates, which is both airy and comfortable, and has the luxury feel of down? Well, we haven't found it yet, but we'll keep on looking. And the same for textiles. I mean, cotton is the most polluting crop on earth. But why don't we use other materials like flax? Flax is linen. It grows here in Belgium. And it doesn't use any pollutants, no chemicals, no chemical fertilizer, or all these different materials. So but we are also looking into Textile. We use Textile in our bedding, which is made from eucalyptus trees or the bark on the tree. We're looking into seaweed. Why don't we use aloe vera? These are all plants that can be grown without having the impact on the environment. So why do we still use cotton? Well, it's still the most comfortable material. And we're a long way from all these other materials being as scalable as cotton. But at the same time, we know that there is an end to our cotton production. So we have to develop materials.
And how do you see the market evolving to these sustainable developments? How do we get those to scale? How do we make sure that there's some developments that can be made in a larger sense in the textile industry?
I think the answer is twofold. In the first thing, we have to look at true pricing, which means why don't we put a true price on cotton in the first place?
Yeah,
because cotton is polluting, but we don't take in the polluting part. We don't take in the people part.
Yeah.
So if we would raise the price of cotton so it actually covers all the damage that it does, it would be more, and that makes other materials more viable to get into a commercial scale up. Yeah. The other one is just getting people interested in new materials, just letting them try out. So when we started Yumeko, we said there should always be a sustainable alternative for your bed.
Yeah.
But even for organic cotton, which is really, it's regenerative agriculture. It's a CO2 negative impact. So it stores CO2 in the ground. That's organic farming, which is good, but it's still not as good as, for instance, bamboo. Well, bamboo is also harmful, but textile or linen. So keep making people interested in new materials and letting them try out. So we said, okay, we do organic cotton. That's what we do for now because it has a huge impact. But we also want to show people that there's an alternative. There's better materials even than organic cotton.
Yeah.
I think that the more of our colleagues start showing the consumer that there are alternatives that are much better for the world and for people and for animals.
Yeah, exactly.
We inform people. It's awareness.
Yeah. I think that's kind of
actually price of true pricing and awareness for other materials.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of key factor in sustainability that you still need to be an advocate for these projects, these sources and different materials and innovations. What would you say is the key to sustainability in textile?
It's the producer and the consumer. I think we have to open the eyes of producers that it's actually possible to make a good profit of new materials, start using that stuff, make it fully available to all consumers, because the bottleneck is in the producing.
Yeah.
Once they start producing and making it available, I wholly believe that the consumer will choose that from a sustainability point of view. And the other hand, again, is the awareness of the consumer that there are other materials available that are better for the world.
Do you think it's possible to make the sustainable fabrics in a way that the consumer is able to still purchase them, or that it doesn't become too expensive? Because I know that that's an issue that people bring up often in regards to sustainability, that it becomes very expensive. What do you think about that?
I think with cheap stuff, people should ask themselves, how is this possible in the first place? How can you make it this cheap?
Yeah.
I believe that all the cheaper products are actually, that someone somewhere in the chain is suffering from it.
Yep.
So I think that's a very important part of it.
Yeah. No, that's a good answer. And where do you see the textile industry is headed in terms of sustainability? Do you think that these kind of larger scale sustainable textile projects will be coming up in the coming years? Have you already seen it? What are your thoughts on that?
The answer is yes, I do see it. I do see a lot of developments.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful because I see all these developments, and at the same time, I know that the biggest producers of textiles, or the biggest users, the brands, they're still driven by shareholder value. It's still focused on profit and not on what the impact is on our society as a whole. And that's, well, I still think that's worrisome. I think that shareholders should take a grip on themselves and just accept that their profits are a bit smaller than before, and should focus on sending all the companies towards sustainability. Because it's not about us, it's about our kids, it's about our grandkids, it's about the world that we leave after we are gone.
Yeah.
And I think that companies should actually take their responsibility, and actually, from a governing point of view, that they should actually stimulate that change now and not tomorrow.
Yeah, interesting. And I guess also there's a kind of aspect of future-proofing the company. So I don't know how you feel about that, but maybe there's also some financial incentive in the future to be a sustainable company.
I hope so. I hope so. There's a big role for government there.
Yeah.
I think that it's again true pricing. I think governments are very well aware that there's a lot of damage in all the production processes that we have. And why don't we tax companies accordingly? So we can actually, because I think the governments are the one that can steer sustainability towards a larger scale.
Would you say that legislation is then the most important driving factor in general in the textile industry to become more sustainable?
I think that's one of the the biggest parts of that should start to happen now. We as companies have shown that it's possible. I think it's now up to, well, the voter and the governments to actually put their money where their mouth is, not just agree to all the sustainable development goals, but just put your money where your mouth is. Make a change.
Yeah.
And it's not that difficult. And I think governments have the responsibility to stimulate that, to tax the products that are harmful for environment, people, and animals, and to stimulate the ones that aren't.
Interesting. Yeah.
For instance, with a lower tax rate. Which is
there are already some initiatives in certain countries which indeed do have incentives. So
and they're talking about a lower VAT tax on vegetables and fruit, for instance, which is fantastic. So why are they taxed the same? And why don't we, for instance, introduce a sugar tax? I know that other companies talking about a sugar tax. It's very important that we do it, because that's power that the government has, is stimulating and destimulating.
And do you think financial incentive and just kind of a green heart in terms of a founder or CEO, what role does that play in making change?
I think that founders are very important. I mean, we are the one who climbed the barricades, but at the same time, it's also about inspiring others to do the same. And showing, I think that's one of the most important, that we show that you can be successful by just doing sustainable things.
Yeah.
And not doing the old traditional ways. We have to think, why are things made in the way they are? And I think that companies have a responsibility there, and especially the CEOs, who are the one who drive, and the management teams who drive the progress, who see the strategy, make a shift and make it now.
Yeah. Well, really interesting. We are at the end of our interview, but I have one last question, and that is, what other people and companies have inspired you in terms of sustainability?
I have quite a few of them. They're my colleagues, of course, but I think in my field, I love Patagonia. I really think they are taking the next step. And as a big company, and I'm really looking at the bigger companies. I mean, Patagonia has been on the right track for a long time. But for instance, Ray Anderson of Interface Floor, who really changed a very polluting industry to zero impact or zero pollution. And now they're talking about a net positive effect. And I think that a Unilever with a Paul Polman also focusing on that net positive effect. So it's not do no harm, it's about do good.
Yeah.
And that's net positive. And I think if I look at Yumeko and our future, we want to be a net positive company.
Yeah.
When we leave this earth, we are actually have proven that it's possible to give something instead of just taking and eradicating all our soil and air and water. It's
the story is to give back instead of just fill what we have already taken.
We just take and take and take without giving back. And I think it's time.
Great. Well, thank you so much for this interview and time. And I learned a lot of interesting things, and I'm sure other people will also be very curious to hear about sustainability in the textile industry. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.